My first stop in this journey is a small town called Bayfield, Colorado. I've chosen the subject of success as the theme of these first series of interviews. I want to know what success looks like in other people's states, cities, or even on their street. The first person I decided to interview is this pastor of this local church here in town. She was incredibly candid with me about her life, and I'm eternally grateful for the time she gave me. So without further ado, I present to you Pastor Jane. Hi.
Hi.
This is the first interview in this series, and I'd just like to begin with who you are. Just give a brief explanation of who you are, what you do, and how we met.
Okay. Well, and do you need me to look
No, you can
that
look at
way?
me.
Okay,
Yep.
look at you.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I'm Pastor Jane. I am the interim pastor at Calvary Presbyterian Church in Bayfield, Colorado. And you and I met because you came to worship last Sunday.
I did.
And we started talking afterwards.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the subject of this first series of interviews broadly is success. I'm going to be traveling the world asking people what success means to them, what it looks like to them, if they've achieved it on any degree of the spectrum. But I want to know a little bit more about you specifically before I have you answer that question. I want to know where you started your life out, what your life has looked like up until this point, because when I met you last week, granted, I'd never been to church before, but the way you spoke and the things you said really, really moved me. And so I'm very curious about how your path to be able to deliver a sermon like that, is a sermon the right word? Mm-hmm. That could move me in that way. What was the story of you arriving here last week? Not the whole thing, but where were you born? Did you have a happy childhood? Was there much anxiety or angst or adversity in your life? Those types of things. Because I want to know how you arrive at such a place where you seem so cool, and to have yourself together, whether that you're just holding it together for the crowd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was born in Iowa, and I'm firstborn. My dad,
Of how many?
Of two.
Okay.
Yeah. And my dad was in graduate school when I was born. And that, in some ways, set things up. Education is very important in my family. I mean, my maternal grandmother had a master's degree in chemistry 100 years ago.
Wow.
And or very nearly 100 years ago. But so being educated, being an educated woman is very important in my family. And so
Specifically because you were a woman, it was important as a woman
to be, yeah. Or that,
and that was made clear that there was an extra
there was
burden on you.
no question that what my mother and her brother went to college. No question that my sister and I would go to college. That was just expectation, but a supported expectation.
Sure.
Right. Little did my parents think that I would choose to go to school back east, 1,100 miles from home. So I landed in Philadelphia for college.
Now, was that a choice for you to get away from your hometown?
No,
Not at all.
that was
Just how it worked out.
No, that was actually an ego move on my part, because I sat there and said, I'm good enough to go to an Ivy League school, so I'm going. And lo and behold, Penn accepted me. And so I did that. I had a great childhood. It was very secure, very stable. I always knew I was loved. And so.
And your parents expressed openly
yeah,
their love for you.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do a lot of speaking I love yous.
Right.
But.
Did you long for that?
No,
You
because I
understood
so
the
knew
way-
it was there.
Okay.
And the support was there. I mean, showing up for concerts, parent-teacher conferences, all of that. There was never any question but what at least one of my parents would be there.
Sure.
And I learned pretty early on that having a father that participated in all of those things was not necessarily the standard.
Sure.
some of that was work related, some of it was otherwise, but I
Now,
knew.
did you have friends who didn't have parents who were together or didn't have that parental
The
support?
vast majority of my friends had came from intact, stable families,
Wow.
although I knew there were some that didn't. But
Were you aware that there was a difference in the way they viewed the world, the kids whose parents weren't together? At the time, were you
I
aware?
wasn't really
It wasn't on your mind.
tuned into that so much. But I was born in 1964, so the world was a different place
Yeah.
at that point. But I do know when there would be someone in my upper elementary school class or something whose family was breaking apart, that was a huge deal because it was
So rare,
unusual.
right.
Right, that sort of thing. But I also grew up in a very solid church family. And so, go to school, you go to church. That's what
Right.
you do in my family. But that was also, it really was a family. And as I got older, went away to college and moved on into the adult world and all that, I always knew that if I was far away, but I thought there was an issue, I had all these people I could call and say, something's not right with mom and dad.
Sure.
Can you check it out for me?
And your younger sibling, did they take, did they have the same sort of arc of achievement as you? Or
Yeah, her talents are varied. I mean, she's a better musician than I am.
as most younger siblings are. I'm obsessed with birth order, and the youngest are always the more creative ones. I think, and my theory is because the parents were so nervous the first time around that the second was born into a world where they just had it figured out a little bit more, and they had a little more time to figure out what they wanted to do.
But no, my mother she taught elementary vocal music for 40 years, and a church organist for 50 years,
Wow.
and degree in music and organ performance as an applied major, all of that. My sister has more innate musical talent than I do, but she didn't choose to use it as much, although she played the double bass and then the electric bass and various other things in high school, junior high, high school, college, that sort of thing.
But she wasn't a wacky, wild younger sibling?
No.
Right.
She was definitely more social than I was,
Sure.
but so be it.
So life just kind of goes
Life
peachy?
goes pretty well for a while, and made it through college with my undergraduate degrees in nursing, and I worked as a nurse for a year before I went to seminary.
And what was your decision to go to seminary?
About junior year in college or so, I began to get a sense of being called in that direction. I am not one of those that heard a voice or had a vision that God knew I'd be standing there going, what?
Yeah.
So God understood I needed something to grow more gradually. And we speak of a sense of call, and that's what I had.
And so you were a nurse for a year?
I worked full-time as a nurse for a year in New Hampshire, and then I went back to seminary in Iowa. Yeah.
And so at no point in your life was there any massive sort of shifts in your life? Nothing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They came later.
So, okay, it came later. Okay.
They came later.
And so we don't need to get specific about what it is unless you want to, but did you feel you had the tools to navigate those adversities?
Not as many as I would like, but part of that was actually, ironically, thinking, I can get through this, I can do this, I should be able to do this. And there came a point I needed to say, I can't do this on my own. I can't. And so if that means, being on my knees and saying, I cannot do this, I need help.
Right. Now, as a successful independent woman, was that unnatural for you to ask for help? Did it feel like a pride thing that you didn't?
In some ways it was pride, but some it was just, I am totally lost in this situation with, being far from home, relationship not working, lots of things all at once, and I was the one that was going to need to make major physical moves and that sort of thing. And it's like, I have to admit, this is too much.
Sure.
And so it was, but but to say, okay, but I am still a worthwhile person this is not how I had things planned.
Sure.
This is not what I wanted, but this is what it is. So I need to make sure that I don't just kind of creep off into a corner,
Right.
or that I don't become one of those people who does nothing but complain about an ex.
Sure. See, I'll tell you, both my parents and my ex-wife's parents were together forever. And when my marriage split up, man, did I feel like a failure, because I'd always told my son that our only expectation of ourselves should be to do 1% better than our parents. And you have to forgive all the little minor failings of them, because 1% better is at least progress for the human race, right? But I just did not picture myself being divorced. I remember when I was in 7th grade, I remember my friend talking about his mom's boyfriend. I thought, oh, what a horrendous idea, my mom having a boyfriend. And then I thought, man, my son is going to have to see me with girlfriends, or his mom with boyfriends. And it was just so horrific to me. Did you have any part of that you had somehow taken a step backwards because your parents had made it and you couldn't make that happen?
I didn't really think of it that way. A lot of it was just pain, and this isn't fair. I did a lot of this isn't fair. This isn't fair. You didn't keep your promises.
Right.
Instead of saying, oh, okay, if this is the situation you're in, you need to make different. You need to realize your life isn't going to work out like you had it planned or like you'd agreed. So what changes are you, Jane, willing to make? And instead of that, I did just a lot of this isn't fair.
Yeah. And how long did it take for you to kind of land on your feet?
Not too long. And I moved back home where I was welcome. Then a few months down the road, I got a job. And,
so you just have to do a full reset?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And various things happened along the way. And I ended up, I pastored a church for a couple of years, and then I went to Albuquerque and worked at a school there for a couple of years, and then I went back to nursing because that's the way life was working at that point, and everybody needs a nurse.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You know?
No matter how bad the economy gets, the nurses are always going to be needed, right?
Right. And so I did that for an extended period. And, I was a temp for a while, and that was a different way of looking at things. You know, instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to work my way up the ladder somewhere.
You know, it's finite.
You know, it's like, okay. And, you know, if the hospital decides it doesn't need you.
Yeah, that's it.
Which is not what happened. I mean, but still, so I eventually moved and worked at the VA in Albuquerque for a while, and did that. But it was always like, okay, this is good, stable, honorable work, but not where my heart is.
And so what did it take? Was there a defining moment where you decided, I need to make a change? Because was there a defining moment? I
did some of that internally, actually, when I moved from bedside nursing to staff education. So that was a change, positive change on that. But then because of parental illness, I said, I need to go home.
Right.
And I want to go home now, not when I get a phone call in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
But also along the way, in my time in Albuquerque, I met my now husband, and we'd gotten married and all that. And so working with his career too, and trying to, with timing and, and all of that. But he knew I needed to go home, so I went home, and he eventually joined me, and all of that. And so.
And no kids with the first husband?
No kids. I have no children. I have stepchildren, but I have no biological children.
Okay, so the second husband had kids. And how old were they when you got together?
The youngest one was 13 or 14 when we got married. And so I've never had them like living with us.
Okay.
I mean, and he's a fair bit younger than the others. And so, yeah, so I say, grandmother of 9 without having had to work through all that.
Sure.
But that was different for me too, to think of being,
Now-
dad's girlfriend or what,
Yeah,
or then
right.
dad's wife.
Now, was being a mother in your hopes or dreams or plan?
Yeah.
And so how have you reconciled that not happening? Just things.
It didn't, but I also recognize that I made choices along the way that my first husband and I, this is not a stable relationship. It's unfair.
Oh, to bring kids into that.
And then I eventually I considered adopting, but then I decided no, because I was still by myself at that point, and then I married someone who had children and was old enough, didn't want any more, and by that point I was also in my 40s.
Yeah.
And okay, so this did not work out. This is not what I want. But what I took from that, in part, is saying, okay, but then my responsibility for, say, the children of the community or for my friends' children. I have no biological children, but I have a refrigerator covered with pictures of kids from my college and seminary friends and various other relatives and things like that. And so I'm Auntie Jane to a whole bunch of kids, and just kind of try to be helpful in that way. Like they know it's a birthday present from Auntie Jane, it must be a book, that kind of thing. So that's not the way I wanted life to work out, but I also recognize that life does not always work out the way we want it to.
Okay, so come to present day. You look back at the whole of your life, all the ups and downs and achievements and things that didn't quite work out. Do you find yourself having moments where you, maybe your emotional immune system is a little compromised and you find yourself dwelling on the things that didn't work out so much? Or have you found a really good balance where you can live in the present and be grateful? It's
actually, for me, not so much what didn't work out. It's like, what did I not accomplish that I could have, should have, whatever. For a while, my life's answer was, when in doubt, go back to school. So I did that several times. But I also think of some opportunities I've missed as far as education, or just say, well, okay, I could have gone back for a doctorate at some point, but I just never got myself, I didn't have the oomph to get started. It's like, but if I would have just started, and then I would have kept going. But so I feel that by not having the willingness and the oomph to get started, I have fallen short in some things. But I also know that because of, often in my life, because of other people to whom I've been attached, I've been geographically bound.
Right.
And especially before we could do everything online. That was, I still didn't always take advantage of opportunities that were there, in part because of fear of failure. But it's still, but that doesn't mean that where I am, I can't do things that are helpful, do things that contribute to the community.
Sure.
And one thing I learned from my parents, not by big speeches, but by their actions and by the way they chose to deal with their money. If you have resources, if you have talents, you need to contribute them to the community for the betterment of the community, not just for self-betterment.
So that brings me to one of the first things that really moved me about maybe the first 10 minutes last week was everything was about how you can serve or how you should be grateful. It wasn't anything about me. There was not one moment of it. It was about how can I benefit from my existence here. It's about the betterment of all of us, right?
Right.
And after today, I was sort of reminded that what is said in here and what challenges are proposed in here is appealing to the best of us, right? The best version of us can do all the things that you're challenging people to do. So how do you reconcile when not just the people who come to your services, but looking out at the world, why people struggle so much with just either doing the right thing or doing the righteous thing or doing the selfless thing. Because I'm an empath and I feel the energy and the sadness and the happiness of the whole world around me.
So that's a heavy burden right
Well,
now.
it's exhausting. And but I'm not in a leadership position. So when you see people that you speak to week after week and you know that they just can't quite get there, how do you come to peace with that?
Well, none of us is perfect.
Right.
I mean, we start with that,
Right.
And in our tradition here, I mean, there's a lot of understanding our basic sinfulness,
Yeah.
and that's why one thing in our tradition is we have a communal prayer of confession every week, because we acknowledge that there are individual and communal sins. But that's also balanced by understanding the grace and love of God.
Right.
And so it's not, I mean, from me, you're not going to hear you're horrible and awful, you're damned to hell. That's not my style.
Sure.
But also not everything is sweetness and light.
So when
There's very much a realism.
So when somebody comes to you and they say they're struggling with making the right decision or doing the right thing, or they just can't get a hold of their addiction or their desires or something like that, how do you lead them in a way that doesn't shove them away? Because I've been told that I'm intimidating, I'm a perfectionist, and people shy away from me because they feel like they can't live up to some. I'm not telling them I hold them to the many standard, but they perceive me to be holding them to some standard. So people only orbit me generally. And they come around when they want a little bit of inspiration, but generally they don't want. I'm a high. I've described it as I'm a high dose, low frequency friend.
Okay.
Right. And so I want to learn to better serve my friends. So when somebody comes to you, and as you're in a position of authority, I'm not, but when they come to you asking for advice, how do you give them advice without knocking them over the head and sending them running the other way?
Yeah. Well, I try. I do not always succeed. I acknowledge that I too fall short. But I think by giving people space to talk when they know someone is really listening, a lot of times that helps people work through things because they can externalize it.
So they're saying it out loud and hearing it for the first time. And
sometimes.
Right.
And it just knowing that somebody actually cares enough to stand there for 15 minutes and listen to them.
So sometimes not saying anything at all and just being an ear is the best you can do.
Or approaching, have you thought about, or what is that, what effect do you think that action has on helping people speak through and think through what's going on?
Was that the Socratic method where you just ask somebody ask questions?
Well, there's a lot of questions, but I don't know. I do ask questions, but I'm sure I'm not as good at it as Socrates was. But I find that so many people that I encounter, and so I'm speaking from a sort of Western, current day U.S. thing, that they don't feel like anybody's actually listening to them. And so when someone does, there can be such an unburdening.
Sure.
That, I am worth being listened to.
Right.
And so, and I think that's the example we were given. In Christ, I mean, Jesus dealt with people on the margins and took time and dealt with what was happening to them. And I think an awful lot of people in our society now can find themselves somehow on the margin. It could be all sorts of reasons to be on the margin. but it's just like all this stuff that's happening, I'm not part of it, or it's not helping me, or I'm just getting confused. Let's just take some time. But sometimes it is. I mean, certainly with somebody with addiction issues or severe relationship issues and things, those things are beyond my ability.
So you don't
to
even
help.
attempt to get into the specifics of it?
Well, it depends. I mean, you listen, but also then the recommendations of, sometimes people need to go to someone who's professional in those areas, and to really encourage that. And to say we certainly, prayer, study, all of that can go alongside that. You know, there is not a need to separate all those things out. Just like I tell people, okay, I still have RN after my name. I still, you know, have Rev in front of it and RN after it. But because we need to deal with each other as whole persons. And so often we don't do that. And we've made this great separation between the physical and the spiritual, or the emotional, and all those parts need taking care of. But we have to acknowledge we are whole.
Well, one thing that really struck me, though, especially today, is you're telling stories. I think one of the first stories you told of Amos was, what year was that? It was
8th century BC.
BC, right?
Yeah.
And so it seems like we have all the same frailties. Nothing's changed.
Human beings.
Right. And that's so interesting that no matter how much the world and society and technology and everything's changed, we're still talking about the same stuff, the same struggles and shortcomings thousands of years later. And so I think to myself, what is so difficult? What makes it so difficult that we cannot figure these things out? And it's like every person who's born is starting from scratch, and they have to be taught and learn. They start at the same place somebody born in the year 1 did, right? And they have to be taught these things. And as a parent, I was obsessed with teaching him everything I ever learned in my life. I wrote letters to him since I was 17 years old, and he was born when I was 31. You know, I had an obsession with sharing every single possible thing I'd ever learned about society and life, and how to, in the shortest span of time, go from not figuring things out to figuring things out, right? Or saying the right thing in the shortest period of time. And it seems like that's not a common attribute of parents, or even society. You know, we all just sort of asking the same questions over and over again for thousands of years, and I don't know what to make of that. Like, what is our limitation to? I think no. I'll back that up with saying I do think that right now is the best time in history to be a human being. We have the most peace, even though we live in chaos. We have the most chance of surviving. You know,
medical,
that
kind of stuff.
I think there's more clean water.
Definitely.
Life is not nearly as brutal in all ways, natural or unnatural, than it's ever been, right? So I am grateful to be born now, but as a human, I look back at, a story from 800 BC, and they're still talking about the same stuff that we're confused about now. What is the disconnect? And I just cannot wrap my mind around what the problem is.
Yeah, well, when you figure that out, write a book. Okay. But I think a lot of it, though, and there are certainly cultural variations with this. But certainly, I think for a lot of cultures that are dominant in the world at this point, we forget that it's, you know, am I succeeding, whatever, for me or for us?
Well, that's the other thing too, is I look out at every different part of the planet and every different solution they've come up with for basic problems like men's desires or kids being tamed and things like that. And everybody comes up with a different sort of solution, right? Like cover us all up, or Rumspringa, right? And they're all doing it with the idea that that's the best solution they've come up with, where they're from, right? And clearly nobody's nailed it, right?
Right.
But I think from one culture to another, people think, well, that's inhumane, or that's archaic, or that's draconian, or something like that. But it's not in their intent to be that way. It's just the way we perceive these other cultures, right? And so when you look at some other religion or culture's solution to the same things you're trying to help solve in society, how do you, where do you land as far, can you see their intent? That might be misguided, but do you look at their intent first or the outcome first?
That depends on the situation, because it may be the outcome is what confronts me first. But I think it is important to try to figure out where people are starting from.
Right.
Because I've found that not exclusively and not entirely, but often once I figure out somebody's starting point or come to understand someone's starting point, I can far better understand the logic chain that comes after that. But I may not agree with it.
Yeah.
But I also find that sometimes when we spend enough time with each other, listening, and say, okay, we're really not nearly as far apart as we thought, or we're both trying to accomplish the same thing.
Right.
I mean, I've lived in a couple places outside the States, and thinking, but you know, most of the time, people, they want to make sure their kids are fed and educated and do more and better than they do. I mean, that's not limited to some tiny little group of people. That's, you know, they want health for their family.
But people get caught up in the weeds of all the little other differences. And
sometimes, and you know, and sometimes every culture has its ups and downs.
Right.
And yeah, but if we come in and start with I'm superior,
it's not going to work out.
It's not going to work out well. That's right. That's right. Or why doesn't everybody want to be like me? Well, it's like, well, I could give you a list, but to say, okay, let my starting point be this person here is a beloved child of God.
Right.
If that's my starting point, I'm going to approach that person in a much more gracious manner than if I say, well, this person never went to school, or this person doesn't have fancy clothes, or this person never paid their bills on time, or this person, you know, just has the same lousy job the last 3 generations had. Nobody ever made, you know. No, if that's my starting point, I am not going to do well.
Right. Well, I have a theory that there's a lot less racism and sexism and anti-Semitism and all the isms in the world than there actually is. I think there's a laziness problem where, for example, if you have a neighborhood where there's 100 houses and 99 of them are white people who live there, and then a black family moves in, and that makes people feel kind of irky. Or let's say 10 black families move in, or 10 anybody other than white families move in. I don't think somebody's desire to, or natural inclination to move away is because of racism as much as they're too lazy to want to adjust to figure out this new person's way of living. Or they don't want to say the wrong thing. Or they just don't want to have to adjust to hearing a different type of music or seeing a different type of lifestyle, and they'd rather just be around people who, and this goes for everybody, not just white people. I think people have a laziness issue where they don't want to have to adjust to learn to adapt to a different way of life, and that's perceived as feeling superior or racist or something like that. And again, back to what you said, if you start with we're all just children of God, that's and I agree that we're all almost exactly the same with very on the edges differences. if we could get past the laziness of not wanting to make the effort to learn about how somebody else lives, that would solve, I think, a lot of the other problems that are called isms. Now, granted, I do acknowledge there is racism, but I think a lot of things are labeled as isms that aren't. I think that they're actually laziness or just wanting to just not have to change. Does that make
Yeah.
sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that may be part of it. I think discomfort is
Right.
is part of it too.
Sure.
And I find that often our discomfort comes from encountering something that actually makes us look in the mirror differently.
Exactly
We're
right.
like, maybe there's more than one right way to do things.
Right.
Maybe there's more than one kind of music. Maybe there's more than one educational philosophy or this and that. And just because it's not mine doesn't mean it's not acceptable or it's not okay or
Right.
it's not functional,
As people
not
are-
successful.
Right.
Maybe there are things that are wrong.
Right.
But I think, I don't know, I never thought of it as far as laziness. But,
Well, I think
but
discomfort
I
is
think
another
that-
euphemism for the same thing.
But I
People-
think that's
like-
part of it, but it's also how we're taught too.
Sure.
And it takes an awful lot of effort to teach. We're not just inherently the best.
Right.
And I think we as
Or the way I was taught was right.
or the only right.
Yeah, right, exactly right.
And sometimes it's coming to the point of saying, oh, maybe what I was taught was wrong.
Well, like you said, it's very disconcerting to be forced to look in a mirror because there's a lot of stuff buried in us that we haven't addressed. And when somebody acts as a mirror, and I've been told I'm a mirror, that not because I like, call people out on every single thing they do, but I make people uncomfortable because I'm a mirror. I've been told. And I think that's a big part of it is that you're comfortable doing the way things you are, and here comes somebody else who's going to hold up a mirror and you go, not even intentionally pointing out that you maybe have like buried your head in the sand in this way, or avoided conflict in this way, or avoided addressing an issue in this way. But in whatever it is the reason, they're a mirror in that moment, and people would just much rather shy away and not have to deal with it. And I think again that's called isms. If somebody wants to rear away from somebody who, because they look different, talk different, believe something different, I think they're called isms. And like you said, discomfort, it would be, I think, a greater cause of not wanting to embrace somebody who's different than you than a innate hatred or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, and to listen to it, think about it. But there are a lot of things, and situations are different too. I mean, some people are out and out taught to hate.
Of course.
And
I think those are edge cases, though.
yeah, but there's a lot of, no,
No?
I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't want to be challenged.
Yeah, exactly right. So that brings us to, if someone were to ask you, where are you from, what would you say?
Well, usually that's asking in regard to a physical place. Yeah.
But your
But-
quick answer, if somebody says, where are you from?
My quick answer is Iowa.
Okay.
But depending on where I am, I mean, if I'm some other place in the world, some other country in the world, it may just be I'm from the United States.
Right.
But yeah.
So let's
it just depends. But if it's maybe I'm at a church conference or something, and they want to know, am I 2/3 of the way through being a cradle to grave Presbyterian, or did I start out as something else, or who knows? But
So let's kind of start big and work our way down. As an American, paint me a picture of what success looks like as an American in your mind. In a couple sentences.
yeah.
What does success mean in your mind as an American?
Well, because we are such a wide variety, it's hard. I mean, I know what the TV tells us success is.
But I want to know what
but
you
what
believe
I
success
think
is.
Success is, I think success is properly utilizing the opportunities given.
That's pretty brilliant, because that's exactly the way the rest of the world perceives us at our best. This is the land of opportunity, right? And to have the opportunity and not take advantage of that is incredibly sad and wasteful. Mm-hmm. So now let's whittle that down to describe a successful Iowan. What do they look like?
Well, if I back up to when I was growing up and that sort of thing, as opposed to current day,
So
where
somebody you saw driving a car, walking down the street, who was the most successful person in your town or Iowa in general?
Well, I was an educated person, a person who ran an upright business, or a person who was willing to contribute to the community, a person who was there to be a good neighbor.
And you think societally that's what most people would agree, that
I mean,
what
at that
puts somebody in
time,
the highest standing?
Yeah, I mean, is this an upright person? Is an honest person? Yeah, I mean, things have shifted. You know, the states, governmental emphases are different than they were.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, maybe it might be if you're a really good women's basketball player. She's pretty successful.
That's true.
But
well, how about present day Cortez, which is about as small as a town as you can get, right?
well, no, it's a lot bigger than Bayfield.
Well, that's true. Bayfield is.
And I once pastored a church in a town of under 100 people.
Wow.
I was more than 1% of the population.
Okay, so take your choice. Describe a successful person, either Cortez or Bayfield, because the population's here, what, 5,000?
I don't think it's even
It's
that
even
much.
that.
It's like 9,000 in Cortez.
Okay.
But,
so
I think not being a native Cortez person, but I think some of it would have to do with money. And do you have a nice house? Do you have a stable, respectable job? Are you affiliated with the right sort of people? And of course, who the right people are depends, because there are, politically, there are some definitely strong leanings, but they're not held by everyone.
Sure.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I think it would be hard to, it's hard for me to understand what counts as true success in Cortez, because I am not of Cortez.
Sure.
And so beyond those more general things, I don't know. I think some of it would probably have to do with how long has your family been there. I mean, if you're fifth, sixth generation,
you're in there.
You're in there, and you've survived.
Yeah.
And survival and success may be very closely tied as far as what. Because there's not necessarily the same assumption of survival that, say, I grew up with.
Sure.
So just making it.
You know what just kind of struck me is the three examples we just gave: the United States, Iowa, and then Cortez, is parallel to people, where if you look from the broad view, it's very easy to sort of, there's not a whole lot of specifics to divide us, right? It's just taking advantage of the opportunities. But then you get down to a state, and it becomes about family, business, um, uh, your charitability or what you offer to community. But then you get down to a city, and now it's your house, your car, your business. It's going more inward, right? And this is, I think, what my meditation is how to approach everybody as the big, broad thing that we all have in common, and not let the little, once you start digging, let the little things separate me from still wanting to be kind to them or to be generous to them, right? And as we start digging into people, and it seems like now, the first thing people want to talk about is what do we disagree on, right? They want to get right to it, so I only want to be
All right, so
around
I
people
know
who
what category to put you in.
Exactly right. And
Yeah.
I only want to be around people who agree with me, when it really should be the exact opposite. I want to find the things we have in common, and so we will forgive each other the things we disagree with.
Or we
we'll
just
look past
agree
them.
to disagree.
Right.
Or say, I have people in my life who think that, who certainly vote differently than I do. I have people in my life who think that because I'm a woman, I shouldn't be wearing this. But if we can all sit down and have supper together, we've succeeded at some level
Right.
by not out and out rejecting each other.
Right. Well, because, one thing, my son struggled having friends in elementary school. He was twice the size of everybody, a gifted athlete, and was raised around adults. And so he didn't quite understand the parameters of society in fourth grade. A kid who had snot pouring out of his nose and didn't wipe it away for 5 minutes. He was horrified. He didn't ever want to go back. And so after fifth grade, I didn't realize he was alone as he was, but he revealed to me that he had no friends throughout all of elementary school. He lied to me to make me comfortable. And so we sat down and we said, okay, we need to make a chart of who can be let in and who can, because he didn't want to talk to anybody who drank Coke for breakfast, because he's never had soda. He didn't want to talk to anybody who, he got a little bit older, who smoked cigarettes or who vaped or who did anything even remotely unhealthy. I said, well, listen, nobody's going to qualify. If that's your standards, nobody's going to qualify. So I said, okay, let's make a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is they're perfect, right? They agree with everything about you and everything aligns. 1 is they're a degenerate, but maybe they're funny, And so everybody's invited in, but to the right degree that makes you compatible. So if somebody smokes cigarettes and they drink Coke for breakfast and they steal, but they're funny, maybe you only invite them in to the point where you can be compatible, where you can appreciate their humor, but you're not inviting them over, you're not going out with them, and you're not going to get in trouble with them, right? And then maybe somebody who drinks Coke for breakfast, so they're a gifted athlete, so they're invited into a 3, right? And so you find the common ground, and you find the balance point where you can best serve each other, right? And so this is something I told him from 5th grade on, and it's worked out pretty well, because what I had to deal with is that he was reflecting me, and I didn't realize that until I saw it through him, that I only wanted to be around people who were excellent and high achievers, and who could say no to drugs and alcohol and cigarettes like I did so easily, and I didn't find a whole lot of those people, so I was very alone. And he was just he admired me, he was reflecting me, which was a anvil on the head for me, and so this is my hope for people, is that they can see that we all do actually have a lot more in common. Most people aren't thieves, most people don't want to hurt you, but nobody has had the exact same life as you, and they'll not land with the same beliefs or way they do things as you, and that's okay, But we also need to acknowledge there are bad people that shouldn't be in your life also, right? And finding the way to discern between the two is the challenge, I think. But I think that our goal should be to let everybody in to the right degree where we can best serve each other. What do you think about that?
Okay. Yeah, but I think it's, what is our starting point?
Sure.
And if our starting point is this is another human being, because othering people is what gets us where we are.
Exactly right.
And what's gotten us where we are throughout history,
Yeah.
right? Othering. And it's like, let's not. And sometimes it's really hard.
Sure.
And no, you don't need to be best buddies with everybody.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Exactly right.
But to say X person over there is worthless, or that Y person over there is absolutely fantastic and doesn't ever do anything
Yeah,
wrong. Neither one of those is right.
Right. Well, and it will
And-
crumble at some point.
yeah.
The foundation of that philosophy
Yeah,
will crumble.
don't meet your heroes,
Right,
right?
yeah,
Is that what they say? Yeah. And lo and behold, the person that you thought was worthless may be the one that saves you at some point.
Right. Well, that's the story you told today, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, we have to pause. And what is our starting point? And if it is, this too is a beloved child of God, okay? But then take enough time to see. And that's part of the story today is the Samaritan saw and didn't, it took time to really see and what was needed. And instead of just, this makes me uncomfortable, so I'm out of here. And that's hard work.
Yeah,
It's really hard work. It is so much easier
of course.
to just say, nah, I got other stuff to do.
Well, don't you think if you had to boil it all down, that's really what the biggest hurdle is for people, is that they can't sum up the energy to do the hard work, especially if it's not required or a life-threatening
Nobody's
situation.
ever given an example
Right.
of that. And so if it's all about me and building me up, why should I bother? But if it's, how am I building up the other person?
Yeah.
How am I improving the community? Those questions are coming from such a different place that they take practice. I mean, little kids, we're bored. Am I clean? Am I fed? Am I warm?
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to grow past that. If you want to know about human nature, look at a room full of toddlers, right? Some of us don't make enough progress past that.
Right.
But that's survival
Right.
at that point.
Right.
But by the time we're grown-ups, we should be able to do a little better than that. Although I've seen toddlers do wonderful things too, but it's still, it takes a lot of work to grow.
Yeah.
And some of us, through life circumstances or personal choices, ever decided, I don't want to put that much work into it.
And they'll deal with the outcome of that, the lack of stable relationships or whatever it is. I've always said that if you're born in chaos, you'll see chaos for the rest of your life because you understand it. When someone comes along who offers peace, you don't quite even know what to do with that. And so even if you can
Sometimes that
theoretically
happens,
see the benefit of that because it's so uncomfortable for you and you don't know how to respond, you'll choose the chaos even if you don't like it.
It's familiar.
It's familiar, exactly right. And people almost always choose what's familiar than what's good for them. And that goes back to doing the hard work of, there's a certain philosophy that after about 25, no matter how your life started, your life is yours now. You can't just sit on the crutch of my dad did this or I was raised here or I didn't have enough to eat. Granted, you will have a higher mountain to climb, but it's not impossible, right? And but it's easier to just sit in the victimhood mentality of I had all these obstacles when I was young. And we can acknowledge it's harder for somebody who didn't have everything handed to them. But then on the other hand too, I come from one of the most affluent places in the world, and the kids who have everything handed to them, man, do they not have any tools to survive in this world. And what I told my son is that nobody wants childhood trauma, but if you bottle that trauma in just the right way, it becomes rocket fuel. And the more trauma you have, the bigger your tank is. And the only thing that determines whether that tank of rocket fuel burns you alive and kills you or launches you away to someplace else beautiful is your choices. And there's a sort of sweet spot of adversity when you're young that if you can bottle it just right, you unlock a fifth gear that these kids who had no adversity don't have. And you can achieve much more. Most people who've done great things have had pretty rough beginnings or some rough thing to get over. But they just have the type of mind or heart to bottle it up and use it to serve the world better, themselves better, right? It's difficult.
That's happened for a lot of people,
Yeah.
yes. I think it's, or even for those who don't have great adversity as kids, but to somehow have developed within them an understanding that you didn't deserve
Right.
to have a wealthy upbringing, or you didn't deserve to, you're not entitled
Right.
to a life without adversity.
Yeah.
I wish everybody could have one,
Yeah.
but to say, this is a gift, and any gift we get needs to be used properly, and not just not become a sense of entitlement. I mean, I've never been hungry in my life.
Yeah.
I have never been homeless. I've never been abused. All those things, and I am grateful
Sure.
for that. But that doesn't make me inherently any better
Sure.
than someone who had all those adversities.
Well,
In
is
fact, it may make me less because I haven't had those to overcome.
Well, wouldn't you almost argue that that person achieving a similar amount of success as you is more admirable because
They've had to go
they've
through
had to
more.
go through so much more, right?
Yeah.
And there is that. So it is very difficult to celebrate somebody who hasn't had any adversity because it's sort of that, man, well, you didn't have to do this. It's almost more. It's easier to celebrate somebody who has achieved something, who had some stuff to get over, right?
Or just, what did you do with what you were handed?
Exactly.
And that's the question that anybody at any level can be asked. This is what you were handed.
Right. What did you do with
Good,
it?
bad, indifferent. What did you do with
right.
it? And so I was privileged to start here instead of here, but what did I do with that?
Right. Did you sit on it and
Yeah,
just
sit on it
yeah.
and think, oh, I was born on second base,
Yeah, right.
No. But so do I recognize where I started? Do I recognize where this person started? And what have we both done with it?
Yeah.
And so am I using whatever I was handed to improve the world around me? And if I'm doing that,
You're doing pretty good.
then I'm succeeding at some level, whatever it was.
I think that's an absolutely perfect place to end.
Yep, there you go.
I really appreciate you so much for giving me your time like this.
Sure.
You've had an impact on me these last couple of weeks that is profound, and I'm grateful for you forever.
Well, thank you. If I'm a tool, and so if God's in the positive sense of that, saying that, yes, but I mean, my job is to be about God's work and demonstrating that what we would call the kingdom of God is to be here and now, not just the next life, but in the here and now. And so how are we demonstrating that to the world around us?
That's
and so if I am being a vessel in making that happen, then
Well, you did for me.
yay, God.
You did for me.
All right, great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Okay.
you.
All right.